Hi, good morning, everybody. You can probably figure out I'm not speaking today, but that's all right. We have a special guest speaker, and his name is Chris Russell. For many years, Chris was a pastor before going full-time a few years ago with a ministry called Destiny Rescue. Destiny Rescue is involved in, I think, the most important work on the planet for God, because it deals with the most wicked dealings on the planet against God and against the little ones he loves so much. I told first service that years ago there was a song that was very popular, and one of the lines from the song went something like this: "Some want to live within the sound of chapel bells, but I want to run a mission a yard from the gates of hell." And when I think of Destiny Rescue, I think of that song. So, Chris, come on up here and share with us.
Well, good morning, everyone. My apologies, I forgot to reset that between services there. My name is Chris Russell, and I live about 2.5 hours away from you in Goshen, Indiana. And I made the mistake of taking my scraper out of my car last week, and then I came to Chicago, walked out from the hotel this morning, and I was like, what is this? It's April. What is going on here? So evidently, is that normal around here? All right. Note to self. All right. I live in Goshen. My wife and I are getting ready to celebrate our 20-year anniversary this summer, which is going to be awesome. Turned 50 last summer and 4 kiddos. And the oldest is a boy, and then our 3 girls, which we brought into our family 5 years ago. We adopted 3 sisters, and they're 18, 14, and 8 now. And I was one of 3 boys growing up. So girls, wow. That's just a different ball game right there. How many of you have parented more than one girl? Like you had girls at home. All right, God bless you. Because wow, that's just a whole different level of drama. That's why I tell people I volunteer to go on the road a lot. No, I'm just kidding. I absolutely love my girls. I would do absolutely anything for them to make sure that they know that they are protected and safe and loved. And my guess is you would do that for the females in your life as well. And we're going to get into that a little bit more specifically with this topic. So how many of you are guilty like I am during COVID the last 2 years? You've just done a little bit more binge watching of TV shows. Anyone? So one of my favorites, actually is filmed not too far down the road, is Chicago Fire. Anybody watch that show, Chicago Fire? So it's about the men and women of Firehouse Station 51 in Chicago. And they're broken, imperfect, messed up people, just like you and me. But every day they put their lives on the line going out on rescue missions. And that idea of a rescue mission, it really resonates with me and with what I do specifically. But the reality is this idea of a rescue mission is nothing new. We can go all the way back to the first book of the Bible in Genesis and read about how after God created man and woman in his image, they decided, like you and I often do, that they knew better than God. Really, the easiest definition of sin I know is choosing our way over God's way. And the results of that were devastating. Their relationship with God was broken. Their relationship with each other, their relationship with creation was broken. It was a devastating consequence. And they were doomed, if nothing else happened, they were doomed to spend eternity separated from God. And God was not okay with that. And because of his great love for them and his great love for you and me today, God launched the ultimate rescue mission. The rest of the Bible is filled with story after story of how God rescues his people. And eventually, in his perfect timing, God sent his son, Jesus Christ, to live a perfect life and to pay the debt that you and I should have had to pay on the cross on our behalf. And every time one of us places our faith in Jesus Christ, a new rescue story is launched. And that looks different for every one of us. But everybody here, everybody who's here together, literally together, everybody who's watching online, if you've made a decision for Jesus at some point in your life, you have a rescue story to tell. And it looks different. Your story looks different than mine. But we've all been rescued from something, and we've been rescued for something. And every one of those rescue stories is worth celebrating. I don't know how many of you can relate to this, but my father died December 31st of 2019. Had the honor and privilege of being able to officiate his funeral, and it was about a month before COVID shut down everything. So grateful that our family was able to get together to honor him. But my dad had dementia the last 4 years of his life. And I don't know how many of you are dealing with that now with a loved one, or have been down that road with a loved one. It's not an easy thing when you have people who love you and that you've known your entire life get to a place where they don't know who you are at all anymore. And at the very end, Dad didn't know any of us three boys. He knew Mom was important, but he didn't know exactly the role that she played in his life. Just knew that she was an important person. But there was one thing right up to the very end that my dad never forgot how to do. You know what that is? Any guesses? I always get pray. That's a beautiful spiritual answer, and I love it, but that's not the answer. My dad never forgot how to dance. My dad would be sitting around. He would be completely out of it, not engaging with anybody, and somebody there at the retirement center would put on some music, and all of a sudden Dad would be going, start getting the shoulders going, and then eventually, if you left it on long enough, he's going to get out of his seat. And then he's going to be standing up and just starting to do this little side-to-side little move and everything. And unfortunately, those dance moves are hereditary. You saw the full spectrum of my dance skills right there. But, when I think about my dad, it's hard, maybe all of us do that, and especially with losing a parent, sometimes you think back to like going, what, at my age, what was my dad doing? What was going on in my dad's life? And I remember just, when Dad was a couple years older than I am now, Dad really felt this conviction to be able to share his faith more with other people. He really wanted to know how to do that better. So he started taking a class at the church that they were going to in Pittsburgh, and that was an evangelism class, and he would call and talk to me, and we would talk through that. Like, what's that look like to engage people in a relationship with Jesus Christ and draw them into that life-changing, eternity-changing relationship with Jesus Christ? And the motivation for my dad was his dad, my grandpa, because my grandpa was 89 years old at the time and did not have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And my dad could not stand the idea of spending eternity in a place where his dad wasn't going to be. So he would talk with Grandpa on the phone and, kept taking the classes, and him and I would talk about it, and we'd pray about it. And eventually Dad would take the trip from Pittsburgh to mid-state New York every other weekend. He did that for months and months and months to sit down with my grandpa and tell him about the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then it happened. At the age of 91, my grandpa made a decision to follow Jesus Christ. And a few months later, Grandpa came down for the Thanksgiving meal, and everybody's got traditions at Thanksgiving time. Mine is my dad prays for and over our family, and my grandpa asked if he could do the prayer that year. And to this day, I still... I don't remember a word that man prayed, but I remember it being the most beautiful prayer I'd ever heard in my life. Because it was a rescue story. And every rescue story is worth celebrating. Here's something I want to make sure that you hear very clear in our time together today. God is the ultimate rescuer. But what he does for you and what he does for me, he invites us to join him in doing in the world around us. God takes broken, imperfect, messed up people like you and me, my dad and my grandpa, and he allows us to be a part in bringing rescue to others. And while our spiritual rescue is the ultimate rescue, there are many other types of rescue that our Father invites us to join him in carrying out. And throughout the Bible, we read account after account of God calling his people to step into situations to help rescue people from all kinds of injustices. We see Noah, who's called to rescue the few remaining faithful from the flood. We read about Moses being used to set tens of thousands of Hebrew slaves free from the Egyptians. We learn about a young queen named Esther who helped rescue her people from certain destruction. We read about the miracles performed by the apostles to bring healing and wholeness, and the list goes on and on. People being rescued from pain and suffering, people being rescued from hardened hearts, being rescued from abuse and neglect, being rescued from guilt and shame, being rescued from injustice. This theme of rescue saturates our scriptures. And all of these rescue stories, they start with God ultimately. But there are times where he stirs inside of us to join him in his rescue efforts. And when he stirs, we need to be obedient and willing to step into tough situations. We need to be faithful in seeking out the lost. And we need to be relentless in helping to set the captives free. And I don't know of anybody on this planet who is more relentless in setting captives free than my teammate and the founder of Destiny Rescue, Tony Kerwin. I'm sorry, is there any Kleenex up there? Is anybody? Okay, thanks. I should know by now I get a little emotional when I talk about my family. So Tony is the founder of Destiny Rescue, and Tony was in Cambodia, in Thailand area, way back in 1998. He went on vacation with his wife there, and while they were there in Cambodia and Thailand, they ended up overhearing a conversation. Thank you. They ended up overhearing a conversation that turned out to be a trafficker talking to another tourist. And what that trafficker was doing was offering a young child to that tourist for several $100s to do whatever they wanted all night long with that child. And that became their introduction to this reality of what is happening in the world around us. And it led him to one of his quotes. There's a lot of Tony quotes that I love, and this one, there's nothing profound about it, but man, truth is packed in it. And he talks about this. When it comes to issues of social injustice, we only have two choices. You can do nothing, or you can do something. Now, I think most of you may be familiar with the parable of the Good Samaritan. Not interested in walking through that verse by verse and talking about who's who and what role they played in their society at that time. But what's the gist of the story? There's a guy that gets beaten half to death, left on the side of the road to die. 3 people come along. The first person comes along, they see the injustice, and they just keep right on walking down the road. Second person comes along, sees the same injustice. Some versions tell us they went and took a closer look at it, but ultimately they decided to go back to life as usual. And then the third person comes along, and they see the same injustice that the other 2 saw. But they can't go back to life as usual. Something stirs inside of them that they can't let it go. They have to do something about it. And my prayer is today that in our time together, that's what God's going to do with you. You came here today, you had no idea what you were in for. And I'm trusting that God's going to get a hold of some of you, and he's going to hold on, and he's going to stir in a way that you're not going to be able to go back to life as usual anymore. Because this is something that matters deeply to the heart of God, and it needs to matter deeply to the hearts of his people. And we need to be in this fight together. One of my favorite verses related to this is found in Psalms 82. Think about this in the context of what we're talking about today. Give justice to the poor and the orphan. Uphold the rights of the oppressed and the destitute. Listen to this. Rescue the poor and the helpless. Deliver them from the grasp of evil people. That is literally what we are talking about today. And this isn't just some people's marching orders. This is, as Christ followers, this is all of our marching orders. We are to rescue the weak and the needy, deliver them from the hands of wicked people. Let's take a couple minutes, look at the 30,000-foot view of this issue. Any football fans in here? Got some football fans? So the NFL is by far our most profitable sport here in the U.S., right? By far. The NFL makes on average a profit of about $8 billion a year. Anybody want just a small piece of that, right? Baseball, basketball, football, and hockey combined make a profit of about $30 billion. Human trafficking, which is now the fastest growing criminal activity in the world, makes over $150 billion a year. And it's estimated that about $99 billion of that is specifically sex trafficking. And we know that right now there are over 1 million children being sex trafficked around the world. The worst part of that is in Southeast Asia. There's a lower view of women, less opportunities for young ladies as far as jobs, responsibilities they have with family members. A lot of things that put together create this horrible perfect storm for trafficking at a massive level over there. So what that means is right now, 11:15 here. So in a place like Phnom Penh, capital of Cambodia, where I've been out on rescue missions there, they're 12 hours ahead of us. It's 11:15 at night. So while we are sitting here gathered around with people who love us, who are for us, who are pouring into us, worshiping our God who we love dearly, there are literally hundreds of thousands of kids that are being used and put to work right now. And it's not okay. And the Church of Jesus Christ does not get to stick its head in the sand on this one. All of us have a responsibility to be in on this fight. There are more people in slavery now in the history than there have ever been in the history of the world. It's estimated that there's at least 40 million slaves in the world right now. And I'm guessing that's a pretty conservative number. Fastest growing criminal activity in the world, makes more money than illegal drugs and firearms. And why is that? If you own a firearm, you sell a firearm, you make a profit one time. If you own a girl, hundreds and possibly thousands of times. But the good news is, this is a big, big issue, right? That's the bad news. The good news is, we serve a big, big God. And our God goes before us, our God goes beside us, and there is no one who cares more about these precious children than our God in heaven. So he's the one that goes with us, and we trust and tie into and rely on the power from him to be able to do this. And because of that, kids are being set free. And because of people like you, because of churches like yours, last year alone, we were able to rescue 2,386 individuals out of trafficking situations around the world. The youngest of those were 2 8-month-olds. One of those was a kidnapping situation that we were asked to help out with, and one of those was a girl who was in a brothel. If you have a child, that baby becomes property of the brothel, and it's just a matter of time before something happens to it. We were able to rescue both of those before any abuse happened. But that's how deep and dark this situation is in our world around us. Our goal is by the end of 2030, we want to be rescuing in 30 countries and to have rescued a total of 100,000 individuals by the end of 2030. Currently, we are rescuing in 9 countries, and we have 3 pilot countries that are going right now. So we're adding countries constantly, and we need to. There's over 1 million kids out there, and we're not okay with that. So it's going to take all of us working together to be able to eradicate this horrible evil. So how does all of this happen? How does this all go down? Our frontline team is constantly on the lookout for children being preyed upon and exploited. So a couple things to know about Destiny Rescue. I'm not aware of any organization that is in anti-trafficking rescuing on a massive level that focuses on children. That is our primary focus is underage girls. As you imagine, when it comes to sex trafficking, they estimate about 97 to 98% of the victims of sex trafficking are females. We do rescue males, probably 3 to 4% on average. Some of the over 100 ministries that we partner with, some of those specialize in aftercare for boys who have been trafficked. So we may rescue some of the boys, but then they'll go into their care for aftercare. Our aftercare is specialized for underage girls. But everything we do starts by looking for underage girls. So our guys are constantly on the lookout for girls who are being used and exploited. And then the other thing is we're one of the few organizations in the world that actually has our own undercover agents. We have between 35 and 40 full-time undercover agents. There's a lot of groups out there that are gathering intel and then they're handing it off to local authorities, hoping the local authorities will do something with it. But in many countries, local authorities are getting paid to look the other way. So we grow up our own undercover agents, but they're constantly looking for girls who are in dangerous situations. Girls like Lee, who at the age of 15, she was kicked out of her home in her small village. She was told by her mom that she was dead weight and she needed to get a job to support the family. So she took the 6-hour ride into the big city where she got a job, what she thought was a restaurant job, where they gave her a nice dress and makeup and they gave her a room and said, hey, stay here tonight and tomorrow you'll start working. Within an hour of being in that room, one man after another showed up and used and abused her all night long. And that was the introduction for her of what was going to be the next year and a half of her life. She was forced to drink a lot of alcohol and take drugs, and if she refused any man, she was beaten severely. Girls like Bodum, who grew up in a loving home, but her dad suddenly died and they were left with a large debt. She went to the big city. She was a naive young girl. She got coerced into working in a brothel, and men used her over and over again, and she always felt dirty and full of shame. Girls like Noy, who remembers spending all day long in her room crying until it was time to go to work again. She was always afraid of the abusive men, and she felt dirty, and she felt like everyone just saw her as a prostitute and nothing more. Our team is relentless about finding these kinds of girls and freeing them to live out their God-preferred futures. So how do we do that? We have 4 primary categories when we talk about rescue operations. So covert, border, raid, interventional. I'll just talk about each of those a little bit. Interventional is when we get involved with kids who are forced to street beg. We get involved with temple prostitution. We read about that like in the Old Testament, but you just don't really think about that being that's very much still a thing. We've rescued 12 and 13-year-old girls out of temple prostitution situations. So there's some of those. And again, we get involved with labor trafficking sometimes. So all those kind of miscellaneous extras we classify as interventional. But the 3 primary ones, border rescues is about 1/4 of our rescues. So border stations in one of the countries that we rescue in, what happens is traffickers are going into this country and they're identifying the poorest villages, and they're going and they're doing one of 2 things. They're promising the girls a great paying job in their country, or they're playing this ruse that they've fallen in love with the girl and they want to marry her and give her the life of her dreams back in their country. But it's totally trafficking scams. And just kind of a side note, when I travel around here, I go into high schools and colleges and speak, and I talk to kids about social media, because traffickers are all over that. Even if you have kids or grandkids that play video games, even the youngest ones, there's chat features in those games, and there's traffickers all over those. So we need to be having these conversations with our kids and our grandkids about how they're using social media and what the reality is, and obviously age-appropriate terms. But we need to be having those conversations, because when we do these interviews of the girls that we rescue in border station situations, we find out that over 3/4 of them first met their trafficker on social media. So what's happening is they're going across, and all of a sudden they get stopped. Well, it turns out it's because we have 14 border stations there, and almost all of our agents there that are border station agents are local females, and they have permission from the government to be there. So they're standing there in their attire, and right behind them are armed military guards that are going to reinforce for anybody who decides they don't want to stop. And then the kids get out, and our ladies ask questions. Where are you going? What are you going to do when you get there? Where you promise this? Where do you promise that? And if any red flags go up, they have permission to call back to the families. 99% of the time, the families have no idea that their daughter is getting ready to cross this border. And if she takes one step across that border, she will never be seen again by her family. She is stepping into one of the worst countries on the planet when it comes to trafficking. The good news is with our border station rescues is we're preemptively rescuing them. We're rescuing them before the abuse starts. But it's a guarantee if we didn't intervene, we know exactly what was going to happen to them. So that's about 1/4 of our rescues. Then covert rescues. This is a thing that I have an opportunity. I'm not a full-time undercover agent. I'm on the U.S. team based here. But when I travel to our different countries and our different locations, I get to go out with our undercover operations for our covert rescues. And when we're doing covert rescues, we're going into bars and brothels where we believe underage girls are being used and abused. We're supposed to be pretending to be a group of guys out for a fun night. So we got to play this part, and we're going into this red light district, and we're sitting down in this place. You order a drink, the girls gather around your table, and you select who you're going to sit with or possibly be taken back to your hotel that night. Nobody has "hello, my name is" name tags on it because nobody cares what their name is. In fact, many of the places you go into, the girls literally have numbers pinned onto their outfits, and that's how you order them for the night. So they gather around the table, and we grab the youngest looking ones to sit with us, and then we go into intel gathering mode, trying to get their contact information, verify their age. And then the hope is that after a couple of nights of being there, we've built enough trust that we'll pay the bar fine. And that's how they get around it over there. Is I can't go in there, get a girl, go upstairs and be with her. What I do is I pay the bar owner a bar fine because he's losing an employee who would be selling drinks and making money for him. And then I negotiate a price with the girl and take her wherever I want and do whatever I want all night long with her. And then she shows up at work the next night and it starts all over again for her. And that's her reality 7 nights a week, all year long. So when we build that trust level, then we take the girls somewhere nearby. Of course, the bar owner thinks we're taking them back to our hotel. We're taking them somewhere safe, public place where one of our caseworkers is able to say, hey, this is who we really are. This is what we can do to help you get out of this situation. And then they can choose to go into our care at that point. That's about a quarter of our rescues. And then the other half of our rescues is through raids. When we have what's called an MOU, it's a Memorandum of Understanding. It's just a legal document that we sign with the government that says, hey, we're going to work on this issue together. So when we have that MOU in place, now our guys have the undercover body cameras on them, and we're going into places. We're not just looking for underage girls. Now we're gathering video evidence against the traffickers so that when we give the green light to the raid team down the street, when they show up, they're able to come in. We're able to rescue the girls. We're able to arrest the traffickers. We're able to shut down the businesses that think they can use and abuse kids, and we're able to prosecute those traffickers to the fullest extent of the law. So in a place like the Philippines, and we do a lot of rescue work there, we have just arrested a couple 2 years ago that was trafficking 10 minors. And the rule there is, the law there is, if you're caught trafficking 2 minors, it's a 30-year sentence and 30 years for each minor after that. So those two each got a 270-year prison sentence for trafficking those 10 minors. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to go ahead and show you a video real quick. It's a 4-minute video. And this is a video of Tony, who is our founder that I was talking about. And this is him out on one of those undercover operations. And he's going to tell you a little bit about that experience.
I remember one night I got a phone call from one of the boys. He was in a brothel. He was really desperate. He said he had a 13-year-old girl and there was heaps of guys that were trying to take this kid off him, and he was scared he was going to get violent. So one of the boys and I jumped on our bikes and we headed straight over there, and it was quite a small, grubby little bar, about 4 or 5 tables. All of them were filled with guys drinking beer and basically staring at the young girls that were handing out the drinks. And I went over and sat down at the table with the boys, and as I did, I noticed in the back corner there looked like a stairwell going down underneath the floor. So I snuck over there and went down those stairs to see what was down there. And as I got down there, I could see they'd dug out underneath the brothel and built roughly about 7 small rooms. And it was just like a thick smell of stale sweat. It was really quite disgusting. And I walked around the corner, and as soon as I got around there, I could see straight away these pair of small red shoes that some kid had obviously kicked off as she was taken into the room. And as I stood there feeling really helpless, I could hear what was going on in that room. And I remember standing there realising what that 13-year-old kid that we had up at the table upstairs, what she would have to do every single night. And I knew if we didn't do something tonight, she would end up down here at some point doing what that girl was doing right then. So I went back upstairs and sat down next to that kid. And as I did that, the agent leant over to me and he said, this girl's been here for about a week, and every night, usually 4 or 5 times, she gets taken downstairs. And she's forced to have sex with customers and basically raped by these violent men. And I looked over at this kid and she was looking at me, and her eyes just, she was petrified, and it was like she was begging me to do something to get her out of that place. So I called the mama san, the brothel owner, over, and I said I wanted to take this kid back to my hotel room, and we negotiated a price to do that. In the brothel owner's mind, I was taking her away to have sex, but what was really happening is we were taking her away to her freedom. And we just stood up, and this kid took my hand, and we walked out that brothel. She jumped on the back of my bike, and we took off to one of our rescue homes. And as we arrived, I looked back, and I just saw this gorgeous smile on this kid's face as she realised that what we were saying was true. And she went to bed, and I think she slept for 1 or 2 days, which is quite normal. And something these kids often say is, you know, that's the first time I can remember in a long time that I've been able to go to bed and just sleep. And you know, my dream is that all children will be able to go to bed and sleep and not work. I have a photo on my mobile phone of those little red shoes as a constant reminder that there's still one more out there. One more kid worth rescuing, never to stop. Every kid is worth the risk, worth the love, worth the cost.
Something else I want to make sure that you are aware of. You know, I share these girls' stories, and you see something like Tony talking about going in there and getting the girls out of those situations. This is something that's very important for you to realize. Those girls' rescue stories, they did not start the night that our guys showed up and got them out of those situations. That is not the beginning of their rescue stories. Their rescue story started on a day just like today, in a group of people just like you, in a church just like yours, where people decided that they were going to use their voice, use their influence, and use their resources to start setting kids free. And because of people like you and churches like yours that did that, that sets a chain of events in motion that leads to our agents being able to get them out. But our guys cannot do what they do over there if we don't do our part right here. It really is a team effort, and it's going to take all of us to get these kids out. It's not just about rescuing kids. It doesn't do us any good to rescue kids if we don't set them up for long-term success and reintegration. So we have what we call a freedom plan. You don't need to read all the details on there, but here's the gist of it, is the people that know each of these girls the best is going to figure out, what does each of these girls need? Educationally, emotionally, medically, physically, psychologically, spiritually. What are the girls' needs? And we're going to set them up for the best success to be able to reintegrate them back in as much as we can. So when we talk about these over 100 ministry partners we work with, some of those are in the aftercare side of stuff to deal. You can imagine the trauma level that we're talking here for a lot of these girls. And a lot of them are on the job training side of things as well. So we want to set people up for that. So it doesn't do us any good to get them out if we can't set them up for long term. So that obviously there's a financial component to that as well, making sure that they can safely take care of themselves and their families for the long haul. So I had some questions in between services and was just sharing that example that what that might look like. It could be like, say you own a business. So I rescue 2 girls and I bring them to you. You're one of my partners. And what I do is I cover their salary 100% the first 2 months, and then 2/3 2 months, and then 1/3 the next 2 months. So I've helped out in this transition for 6 months. We've given financially to help in this. And at the end of 6 months, you have 2 well-trained, trustworthy employees. So it's a good win-win situation for us, for the girl, for the local economy, if we can get into those trusted partnerships. And then this girl is able to safely and with pride being able to take care of herself and her family. And that's what we want for them. One of the girls that I remember, Shrey Nye, was a girl that we had rescued some years ago. And after we had rescued her, she had gone into a factory and was sewing garments. That was her job. And 2 years after that, she had reconnected with our team, and we had found out that she had now become a manager there. She oversaw 4 other groups of managers and almost 200 employees that she was working with now. And her favorite thing was being able to encourage them and love them and pour into them and share the love of Christ with them, just as she was shared with and encouraged and loved on and had Christ shared with her in her time in our program in particular. But that's what we want for all of the kids that we are being able to be a part of rescuing. So how do you get to join in on that? How do you get, I mean, you're not going to be going out there and doing that frontline work of rescuing. And again, this is where it's the team approach. All of us have to figure out how to give our own best yes. And that's going to look different for each of us. It's going to look different for you as an individual, for your family, for your church family, for your business, your community. That's going to look different. But that's the beauty of it, is God has never wasted a day of your life. All the experiences you have, the expertise you have, the passions, the hobbies that you have, God can use all of those to help set kids free. It's just figuring out, what do you already love to do, and how can you do that with intentionality to be able to set kids free. So let me take just a minute just to talk the financial side, because it's important. We raise funds. That means kids get rescued. That's important. It's not the part I get the most excited about. We'll get there. But just so you know real quick, one of our programs we have is the Rescue a Child program. We've been doing this for over 20 years. We know that the average cost to fly in our agents, to do their undercover work, to get the girl to a safe place for her aftercare is about $1,500. So we know when we raise $1,500 towards rescue, a child is going to be set free. It really does come down to as simple as that. When we have the resources there, that empowers our team to go do what they do best. So $1,500 is that. Guys, we live in the richest country in the history of the world. And I would have said this before I joined the staff at Destiny Rescue. What are you possibly going to do in your lifetime with $1,500 that would be more significant than rescuing a child from this kind of darkness? And so that's a possibility. A lot of churches get involved with that. A lot of families get involved with that too. And then the other one we do, because some people, they're like, hey, I don't have $1,500 to be able to do that right off the bat there. Rescue Partner is our other thing. This is our monthly sponsorship. This is whatever God puts on your heart to do. Our goal is to let everybody be a part of the fight. So it's not like regular child sponsorship. It's like $35, $40 a month. This is open. This is whatever God puts on your heart. So I literally have people who do $1 a month. I have people who do $1,500 a month. It's the fact that all of us can do something with what God has given us to be a part of this fight. And then God takes the hundreds and thousands of all those somethings and turns it into a whole lot of kids set free. So now let me get to the part that I really like. So I've been a pastor for 23 years, and I know we are on the same page where there's nothing that excites us more as pastors than seeing our people get on fire for the things that matter to the heart of God. Because when the things that are the most important and the nearest and dearest to the heart of God become the same things that matter the most and are the nearest and dearest to the hearts of his kids, it doesn't get any better than that. So for me, yes, the money is important. It rescues kids, but it's the faith-activating side of this that's what I love. I love seeing people step up and figure out creative ways to use their voices and to use their influence to raise awareness and set kids free. And this is for all ages. The summer before COVID in Fort Wayne, I had 2 7-year-olds. One of them did a lemonade stand for the summer, and her best friend did little homemade candies that her and her mom had made. Those 2 7-year-olds raised $2,200 and rescued a child. 2 7-year-olds. All right. I've got a motorcycle group that's getting ready to do their 5th annual ride for Destiny Rescue. They're taking something they already love to do. They're just going to take all the proceeds from registration and the food and merchandise sales, and all of that's going to go towards rescuing kids. And they've already rescued over a dozen kids in their previous rides. people who love to run and walk. We've got Race to Freedom and Freedom Walks that people are involved in. Our local Goshen Rotary group. I don't know if anybody's in Rotary or Kiwanis. Those are great groups to tie into as well. Rotary is already established in the community. They have the community's trust. They went out and they got 30 businesses to sponsor this 24-hour Freedom Walk. The high school gave us the track for free to be able to use. We had teams from churches and schools and businesses that came out and participated in this. We shared announcements, shared stories. In this 24 hours of walking and running, they raised $129,000 and rescued 86 kids, running and walking. I've had people who've done bowling tournaments, people who do best ball golf tournaments, people that get their businesses involved. Snap-on Tool, I got a couple from the Chicago area that has a Snap-on Tool business, and they've got our brochures, and they take them around, and anytime that they're closing deals at places, they talk about Destiny Rescue, and their goal is to rescue 6 kids this year through their business. They're taking what they do on a day-to-day life, in the day-to-day life, and they're adding a kingdom purpose to it. And that's what this is all about. It's not, you don't have to be majorly thinking outside the box. Look at your life and what you're already doing. What are you already in the flow of with work and passions and groups you're plugged into? And how do you just attach a kingdom purpose to that and set kids free? That's the fun part of that. So one of the last story on that one I'll tell you about is Jessica. Jessica was 7 months pregnant when I first brought Destiny Rescue to the church I was pastoring in Goshen. And she was hearing those numbers that I told you earlier. 150 billion, 99 billion, a million children, and it was just overwhelming for her. And she was rubbing her belly as she's thinking about, this is the world that I'm bringing my daughter into. And she said, while I was doing that, my daughter kicked me. She goes, and then I went home and sat down with my family to figure out what we were going to do, and God kicked all of us. And we decided, okay, we don't have 1,500 ourselves, so what can we do? So they talked about it, and they brainstormed. They decided, you know what, everybody's got junk. Let's sell people's junk and rescue a kid. So they put the word out. We're going to have a garage sale. Let's rescue a kid. They had so much stuff donated, they didn't have room in their garage. So her dad worked at a plumbing and heating place in Goshen, and they said you could use the back half of the warehouse. So they started 8 o'clock on that Saturday, one-day event. By 9 o'clock, they had rescued 1 kid. By the end of the day, they rescued 4 kids. The next year, they rescued 5 kids. The third year really jumped up because the community knew it was coming. That's the beauty of coming up with an idea that can be done yearly, is the community knows it's coming. We had someone donate an 8-year-old vehicle. We had members from the church step up with their stuff. I said, hey, I'm going to donate 3 hours of car repair work. I'm going to do photography. I'm going to do videography. The ladies did a bake sale table. Like, people just stepped up and gave their gift of what they were good at into this. 23,000 raised, 15 kids rescued. The next year, they were sick, some family sickness, so they put it together late, still raised $12,000 and rescued 8 kids. This past year, we had it in October, the 5th year, $24,000, rescued 16 more kids. So what started in the heart of one person who was stirred up to do something has empowered and unleashed hundreds of people in their faith to do something about it, and in the process has rescued 49 kids in the last 5 years. And it all started with one person who was stirred up to do something. That's the power of what God wants to do in and through us. You have tremendous influence. You have a powerful voice. Use it. Follow us on social media. Share it and add your voice to it. That's one of the most powerful things you can do. You have your circle of influence. You go on, you get a video, you get an article from us, you share it on your social media, and then you share, why is this important? And why does it need to be important to your friends? That carries a ton of weight. And you can raise awareness in a hurry in our social media driven world nowadays. Use your voice, use your influence, use your resources, set kids free. Let me close with this story. Mew was one of the girls. Her story was very similar to some of those other girls that I shared earlier. And when she was rescued, she went into one of our group homes for a while, and eventually she ended up opening up a salon with another girl who we had rescued that went through our cosmetology training program. But at one point, we had a Christmas party, and you can imagine a room full of like 12 to 18-year-old girls. It gets a little loud and rambunctious, and they were having fun, teasing each other. Then eventually the atmosphere started to change, and they started to get a little bit more serious about the conversation, and girls started getting up and started sharing their own stories. And it was a powerful time, and Mew's a pretty quiet girl, and eventually she got up and she started to share her story as well. And when she finished, she looked at our rescue agents and she looked at our caseworkers, and she said something that motivates me every day to do what I do. She simply said this: "Thank you for considering my life worthy enough to come and rescue." I heard a statistic once that the average cost to be with a child worldwide was $4.35. That's the value the world places on these girls. And as Christ followers, can we be any further from that in recognizing that these girls are made in the image of our God? They are daughters of the King, and they are priceless, and they are worth fighting for. They are worth whatever sacrifice it takes on our part. And together, we make those sacrifices. We follow after God's heart. He's going to use you and he's going to use me to set a whole lot of kids free. Thanks for allowing me to be here. It's good to be able to share with you, and I hope that God stirs in you and that you step up to whatever it is that he leads you to do next.
You rescued me.
Father, we ask you to continue to use Chris and the whole team at Destiny Rescue, Lord. Be with them. Give them great grace, protection. Lead them, Lord, to these children who are being held, that they might get them out of this incredibly evil situation. Provide the resources they need. Stir our hearts as a church to know what we can do to help this ministry do what you've called them to do. And we thank you, Lord, for bringing Chris here today. And Lord, your words, you said, lift up your eyes and look. The fields are white unto harvest. We get a little myopic, Lord. We tend to only see what affects our lives often. Give us grace to get our eyes off of ourselves and to look at our hurting world and many hurting people, including many precious children. And give us grace to know how we can help to deliver these kids. We thank you, Lord. We ask that you would just continue to bless Chris and bring him home safely to his family today in Jesus' name. Amen.